And welcome to Never a Truer Word, where we look at the words that people choose to use to see if they're telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And we're going into the Madeleine McCann case now. Madeleine disappeared in 2003, and Christian B., a German guy, has emerged in the last few years, in the eyes of some at least, of being a key suspect in her disappearance. And there's been some new allegations made about him. So are they credible? Here's the story that we're going to look at, which is linked in the show description. So if you want to read the article in full, watch the interview in full, then the link is there. The headline says, "Plot to kidnap child hatched a week before Madeleine McCann disappeared." Expat Ken Ralphs said that Christian B., the German drifter suspected of abducting Madeleine, tried to recruit a mutual friend to help find a youngster to sell to a childless couple. So we're going to look at the words of Ken, and we're going to see if we think he's telling the truth or if there's some deception happening there, because that's what we do here. We look at the words that someone uses, the statements they made. We're not going to look at evidence or whether it's logical even or whether it's credible. We're going to look at the words that someone chooses to use. And as you're looking at these words, as you're listening to them, watch for a couple of things. Watch for changes in style. It can be really instructive if someone changes the way they talk about different situations, changes how many words they use, what sort of descriptions they use, how they describe themselves in there, and watch for storytelling as well. That's when it's less like someone telling you what happened and more like someone narrating a book to you. When that's happening, there's a chance that deception is happening. And I always want you to come out of these episodes with a bit more skill in looking at the world around you and the words that are used around you so that you're better armed to detect deception in your everyday life. As always, if you see or hear something you think, wow, that works for me, press the like button. It's a simple act. Not many people do it, but the more people that do, the more this content gets out to other people. You can use the share buttons to do the same thing. If you think you know someone that's interested in the Madeleine McCann case and they'd like to know a little bit more about what is going on in it currently, the share button is fantastic for that. The comments, whether they are on this platform or whether you get in touch on social media, always really insightful and make me think a lot about what it is that we're doing here. And as a bonus, you could start in one of the bonus episodes where we look at the comments that are made on the episodes. And if you press the subscribe or the follow button, whichever is available to you, then you'll get more like this to your device as soon as it is released. So let's look at the words of Ken then. And this is the first part of Ken that we're going to have a look at.
We had a few beers. And then obviously during the early hours of the morning, started to cry. Well, then he confessed to me he was getting involved with Christian to take a child from Praia Da Luz from a rich family.
So the first thing that is said there is we had a few beers, and then obviously during the early hours of the morning, and the name is bleeped out for legal reasons. They can't use the name of the person that they're talking about here, but the name started to cry. I want you to notice there was an edit there in the video, so it doesn't flow exactly. And in fairness to Ken, we need to be aware that he may have said much more when he was being interviewed for this piece than we actually see. Certainly, the interview didn't flow quite as it appears there. So there is an edit after started to cry. Ken picks up and says, "And then he confessed to me that he was getting involved with Christian to take a child from Praia Da Luz from a rich family." First warning for me here, this is a second-hand story, a big red flag for two reasons, okay? First off, if we used all the skills we have and we detected that Ken was telling the truth, that's only the truth as Ken knows it. So if we went, yeah, everything he says stacks up, we believe this did happen, then all we believe that happened is the conversation happened, that he was told that this was happening. That is not proof or evidence that there was actually this plot by Christian B to take a child from Praia Da Luz from a rich family, only that Ken was told there was. The other thing that is a red flag around secondhand stories, and you'll see this on social media a lot, is that someone wants to say something, potentially they believe it could be true or it is true, they just don't have the evidence, so they'll concoct. A friend told me this, I'm hearing from an insider that, and it really is deceptive. And you'll know this sort of story. It's when someone says something like, a friend tells me their child at school has been told XYZ, what an outrage, and it starts a viral Twitter or X thread, and you're sitting there looking at it going, why did you have to involve a friend here? Why is this a second-hand story? So second-hand stories always worry me. For example, if I told you I went to the cinema last night, if you believe me and you tell someone else that I went to the cinema last night, you'll be talking truthfully because you believe the truth is I went to the cinema last night. And that's whether I went to the cinema or not, your language will be truthful because you believe I went to the cinema last night. So I always have red flags for a couple of reasons on second-hand stories. The next thing I noticed from Ken is and then storytelling. We had a few beers and then obviously during the early hours of the morning, the name started to cry and then he confessed to me he was getting involved with Christian. And then are words that we use to skip time. Now, why do we want to skip time when we're talking? It could be we want to be brief. So if you wanted to tell someone what you did last night, you may say, we went out for a few drinks and then the cinema, right? And you're hiding what happened when the few drinks happened, the trip from wherever you were drinking to the cinema. And then is used to keep things brief. But it also, if you noticed, it hides things. And sometimes when people are telling deceptive stories and they don't want you to tell you all the truth, then they'll use and then to hide things. I was walking down the street and then I saw someone, and actually I was walking down the street and I was looking for someone and eventually I found them and then I saw them. So and then is used to jump time, but it can be used deceptively. It can be used to hide things, and we don't know what it is here. We just note that Ken is using and then storytelling. Do want you to notice how this is all in the past tense, exactly as we would expect from someone telling a true story about past events. We had, past tense, a few beers. The name of the person started, past tense, to cry. Then he confessed, past tense to me. He was getting involved, so past tense. And that is an indicator that this could be truthful. If someone is telling you about past events and they move into the present tense every now and again, or they tell the whole story in present tense, red flag that this story could be being made up. But Ken, certainly here, reliably in the past tense. Ken says, we had a few beers and then obviously during the early hours of the morning, this person started to cry. Why is it obvious? It's not obvious to me. It's not an obvious consequence of having a few beers that someone cries in the early hours of the morning. So why is Ken telling us obviously such and such started to cry? Well, obviously is a convincing word. People use it all the time to control what we think about what they're saying. If someone says, yeah, obviously, what they really mean is don't question this. I don't want you questioning this. It's obvious. It's obvious. What I'm going to say is so obvious that you should not question this. It's obvious. So obviously, bit of a controlling word, definitely a convincing word. When someone's not quite sure of what the ground that they stand on, they'll tell you, obviously this happened, so that why would you question something that's obvious? That's what I believe we could be seeing here. The next thing, if you notice that the person was crying, but that's the only emotion that is there. Emotions are, he doesn't say why he was crying, what he was upset about. He does say that he was getting involved with Christian, but he doesn't say whether this scares him. He doesn't say, whether is really, really, he wants to back out, but Christian's scaring him. He doesn't say that. The emotions are not there whatsoever. He starts to cry. And then he confessed to me, so we don't quite know. Maybe that's what the jump in time is. It's skipping some sort of emotions, but emotions missing from this. There is crying, but there are no emotions. And then the description. He was involved with Christian to take a child from Praia Da Luz from a rich family. Now, is he crying because he was involved with Christian to take a child? Very possibly. It would make me cry if that was happening to me. But then why add in from Praia Da Luz, from a rich family? Well, those are things that point to it being Madeleine. Yeah, those are things that point to it being Madeleine. If it was just take a child, this happened 20 miles away from where Madeleine was abducted. So I get where the relevance would be. But, really, would the crying, would the confession be about where the child was being taken from or the family that the child was being taken from? Or would it be about taking a child? That's the important thing here, taking a child. So I want to know why he's described it as he confessed he was getting involved to take a child from Praia Da Luz, from a rich family. That could have come out in a large conversation, but just as would not be expected. Why are you crying? Because I'm getting involved in a scheme to take a child from Praia Da Luz from a rich family. Would not be expected. Here's more from that interview.
I said, it's ridiculous, don't do this. What are you getting involved with people like this for? You can't kidnap a child and ask for a ransom, you'll end up going to jail. He said, it's not about a ransom, it's about selling the child to a German couple who couldn't have children.
So we have, I said it's ridiculous, don't do this. What are you getting involved with people like this for? You can't kidnap a child and ask for a ransom, you'll end up going to jail. He said, it's not about a ransom, it's about selling the child to a German couple who couldn't have children. So what did you notice there? I notice, again, we have past tense. I said, he said, reliably still in the past tense. I do worry about how much, when he's relating these events, he's quoting conversations that happened in the past. Can you remember word for word the last conversation you had with someone before you watch this or listen to this? No, I certainly can't remember word for word. I remember the gist of it, but word for word, no. And he is giving the impression he's recalling these conversations word for word. Yeah, always very interested in why he's doing that, but reliably in past tense. I said, it's ridiculous, don't do this. What are you getting involved with people like this for? People like this. In the telling of the story, he said, I'm involved in a plot with Christian B, but this has been bounced back to him with getting involved with people like this, not a person like that, or Christian, or him. People, plural, like this. So what's going on there? There's a mismatch there between what's being said and what was said previously. Is this friend got a reputation for getting involved in multiple daft schemes, and that's why it's people like this? Could be. We don't know, but I'm interested as to why the two things don't match up. Why he's been told the story, or what, in his words, he's been told the story about getting involved with one person, Christian B, and he's coming back to him by getting involved with multiple people, people like this. Doesn't match. You can't kidnap a child and ask for a ransom. Well, funny, you just can't kidnap a child. You know, the ransom part of it is, you know, you can't kidnap a child, you'll end up going to jail, right? That, again, is the big thing. And he seems to be adding more on to this, taking a child from Praia Da Luz, from a rich family. And again, it's you can't kidnap a child and ask for a ransom. You just can't kidnap a child. So again, more feels like it's being added to what's being said. I know it's not a reliable word for word recap of what was said in these conversations, but bits are being added in that I'm not entirely happy with. Also, the phrase that he came back with in his response, you can't kidnap a child. If you look at what he said he was told previously, it was getting involved with Christian to take a child, not kidnap a child, take a child. But that has been bounced back again in the reply to kidnap a child. You'll notice as well, I've been talking about it being in past tense. When Ken has been talking through the conversations and almost acting out what he said and what he was told, he's been using the present tense, which is what these conversations would be. As they happened at the time, they would be in the present tense. Apart from this part here, it's about selling the child to a German couple who couldn't, past tense, have children. And again, to a German couple, more being added in here. So this is like, you know, is he adding things in that we wouldn't expect to hear? You know, I would expect to hear, it's not about a ransom, it's about selling the child to a couple who couldn't have children. The word German has been kind of crowbarred into that. And the words I find that have been crowbarred in, like Praia Da Luz, from a rich family, German, all things that point to Madeleine McCann and Christian B. So I do wonder about, is this exactly what happened? Or is it a story that is being made to fit the circumstances that Madeleine disappeared and also fit now the accusations that are being pointed at Christian? Here's some more from Ken, who returned to Britain shortly after that conversation. He says, when he discovered Madeleine McCann had been abducted, he went straight to the nearest police station.
They just said, to the police, look, here's the secret map of how you get to this point here. And I said, that must be sent immediately to Portugal.
So Ken says, I just said, to the police, look, here's the secret map of how you get to this point here. And I said, that must be sent immediately to Portugal. The first thing I'll point out is when he talks about here, here's the secret map of how you get to this point here. He's giving the interview at the point where he said the conversation with his friend happened. So that's why he's saying here. What else do I notice? I notice incredibly controlling language. Look, you need to. And I said that must be sent immediately to Portugal. So quite controlling language in his conversation with the police here. The secret map part, that was interesting. Here's the secret map, not just here's the map, but here's the secret map. Well, something I've noticed about Ken's words as we've been going all the way through this is Ken seems to want to be seen to be very helpful and to be doing the right thing. So when his friend told him, and this is in Ken's words, when his friend told him that Christian was roping him into a plot to abduct a child, Ken told him, this is ridiculous and you'll go to jail. So Ken seems to really want us to know that he does and did the right thing. And I think that's the same thing. Look, I told the police, you need to do this and this must be immediately. You know, he had a sense of urgency to get the right thing done. And he's not just giving them a map of how to get to where the conversation happened or where Christian could be. It's a secret map that I'm sharing with the police. I think that's what's going on there. I think Ken wants to be seen as a helpful person who does the right thing. I said that must be sent immediately to Portugal. What, just the country in general? Or, vague language there, to the police in Portugal or to the investigating teams in Portugal would be expected, but he just wanted it sent immediately to Portugal. Here's some more from Ken. And here he is talking about his return to Portugal, and he went to see the police there too.
They said, have you made your statement to the police? I said, yeah. They said, well, don't worry, go home. If they need to contact you, they will. And of course, for endless years, nobody did contact me.
So Ken says he went to the Portuguese police, and then in his words, they said, have you made your statement to the police? I said, yeah. They said, well, don't worry, go home. If they need to contact you, they will. And of course, for endless years, nobody did contact me. I've got of course there. Of course, for endless years, nobody did contact me. This is very much like the obviously that we saw earlier. It's a convincing word, and it wasn't obvious to me why he started crying. And here, of course, I don't know why, of course, for endless years, nobody did contact me. Why, of course, for endless years, nobody did contact me? Why is he saying, of course? Is it a distrust of the police? Could be. Is it the fact that actually this never happened? And that's why, of course, if you didn't actually go to the police, of course, for endless years, nobody did contact me. This interested me. He says he waited endless years. Now, in his telling of the story, he was told a week before Madeleine McCann disappeared that Christian was plotting to take a child from a rich couple in Praia Da Luz. And as he says, when he heard about the abduction of Madeleine McCann, he went to the police. And then he went to the police again in Portugal. And then for endless years, he waited to be contacted. That's really interesting, especially for someone who I think really wanted to do the right thing. He just seems to have sat back and waited to be contacted, not again contacted the police again, not maybe went to the press or spoke to the McCanns themselves, who were after they were very active in looking for leads, and lots of investigators working on it, but Ken just sat back for endless years. That's interesting and slightly concerning. And also notice that he doesn't say for all these years the police didn't contact him. Nobody did contact me. Why nobody? Why is he not talking about the police here specifically? Why is it just a very general, for endless years, nobody did contact me? Here's the last part from Ken.
You told the UK police in 2007. Mm-hmm. You told them again in 2020.
Yeah, I've sent my statement to the German prosecution.
And then what happened?
And then they've just sent it straight back to Scotland Yard.
So what's happened to?
They found him.
And did he back up your story?
Well, he said he doesn't know us. I have 12 independent witnesses that can prove he's lying.
So the start of that, you told the UK police in 2007, and Ken says, mm-hmm. And the interviewer says, you told them again in 2020. And there's a kind of question mark there. And Ken says, yeah, I've sent my statement to the German prosecution. Does that answer the question? You told the UK police in 2027. You told them again in 2020. The question is, did you tell the UK police again in 2020? And he says, yeah, I sent my statement to the German prosecution. Well, that's not the same thing as telling the UK police again in 2020. Why did he not answer that question directly? He's then asked, and then what happened? And Ken says, and then they just sent it straight back to Scotland Yard. He's asked, so what happened to, and the person is named and it's bleeped out. Ken says, they found him. And he's asked, and did he back up your story? And Ken says, well, he says he doesn't know us. I have 12 independent witnesses that can prove he's lying. First thing I've got there, doesn't answer the question twice. So what happened to this person? They found him. That's not what happened to the person. That's what someone else did. So what has happened to the person, and why is Ken not answering that question? So what happened to the person? They found him is not answering the question. What is it about answering the question directly and honestly that makes Ken uncomfortable, and he wants to go on to something a bit safer for him to say they found him? And the next question, and did he back up your story? Ken says, well, he said he doesn't know us. So he's asked a question where the answer could be yes, no, or I don't know. And he starts with well, which is not yes, no, I don't know. In fact, there's no yes, there's no, there's no I don't know in the answer to that question. So that's a red flag that something is being hidden, that we're being taken onto a bit of a diversion route here. And he starts his answer with well, which is always a sure sign that you're going to hear something that you weren't expecting to hear. So, and did he back up your story? We're expecting yes, he did. No, he didn't back up my story, or I don't know. No one's ever told me, right? Instead, we get well, which means you're going to hear something unexpected. Well, he said he doesn't know us, which is a yes-no question, and he does not answer the question yes or no. Ken says, I have 12 independent witnesses. I think not just 12 people, 12 others, 12 friends, independent witnesses. It's a very formal phrase, isn't it? I have 12 independent witnesses, and we tend to use formal phrases if we want to appear impressive. If we want to make the point look more solid than it does, we'll use formal languages. So I have 12 independent witnesses, and those independent witnesses can prove he's lying, but doesn't say about what. Is it about the fact that he says he doesn't know Ken, or is it the fact that, was he asked about this plot to abduct Madeleine? Because really what we want from this, and what I think the interviewer is getting at, is, did the police go and talk to your friend, and did he back up your story that he was involved and he knew that a week before Madeleine McCann disappeared, Christian B was plotting to abduct a child? We don't get any of that whatsoever. And Ken says he's lying. So we don't know what it is that Ken claims that this friend is lying about. Also, one final point. If he has, I have 12 independent witnesses. I have suggests ownership or possession. If you have ownership or possession of these people, are they really independent? In your words, you have them, so are they independent? So that's the words of Ken about Christian B. I've got some complex conclusions here. Big difference, if you notice, between the descriptions of his interactions with his friend on the night where they had a few beers and with the police. The police ones, Ken is very meek and mild, apart from that first police interaction where you must send this to Portugal immediately. He was in control in that interaction. With the other conversations with the police, he let them be in control. I'm just going to sit back and wait for someone to call me for 17 years. He went from must do in that first police interaction that he had, you must do this immediately. He went to waiting for years. Now, look, I said there was some edits in this. I would have to hear a lot more to be reassured in any way that the conversation with the friend about Christian planning a kidnapping happened, especially like he said it did. But it seems to me that it's a secondhand story, and some of the wording being used suggests that maybe something happened. Maybe there was some conversation in the vicinity, near enough to Praia Da Luz and ish close to the point where Madeleine was disappeared. And then some other things have been embellished or added into this. The fact it was Praia Da Luz, maybe that was never mentioned before. The fact it was from a rich family. The fact it was for a German couple. So I'd have to hear a lot more to be reassured. that conversation that let Ken know that Christian B was planning a kidnapping 1 week before Madeleine McCann's abduction happened. It does it. Too many red flags, too many question marks, too many bits of storytelling there for me to conclude that that did happen. If you take something away from this, watch or listen for changes in styles when someone's having, when someone's telling you a story, especially the amount of words they use, the amount of detail that they use, their position in the conversations as well. Watch for those changes, because then it might just let you know when someone's telling the truth and whether they're moving into a bit of a storytelling mode. And that storytelling, it can be very important. Is someone just telling you what happened, telling you the events and facts that happened, or are they telling you a bit of a story, almost like a children's fairy tale? Once upon a time, this happened, and then this happened, and then that happened. If you hit the subscribe or follow button, you will get more like this as soon as it's released. You'll direct to your device, you'll get a notification, and your skills in detecting deception in the words and statements around you will improve in no time. If you enjoyed this, if you got something from it, hit the like button or share it with people. There's a lot of people interested in the disappearance of Madeleine McCann, a lot of people talking about Christian B. So if you share it with them, then that helps this get to more people. And as always, comments, whether they're on this platform, whether they're on social media, all the links are in the description to this show, are always appreciated, and you may find yourself having your comment answered in one of the bonus episodes. Finally, neveratruerword.com, more podcasts, more videos. You can find all the socials there as well. Sign up for the newsletter, and if you really want to know what's being said in the world around you, there's a couple of books that you could purchase, have a look at, and you will find a much richer way of looking at the words that people use in your everyday life. And we'll see you again soon for something new from Never a Truer Word.